Welcome to the Geekcentric Podcast, and welcome back to our watch club for Loki Season 2. We die with the dying, we're born with the dead. Welcome back to Watch Club. My name is Nate, and this is our watch club for Loki Season 2, Episode 6, the finale, titled Glorious Purpose, directed by Aaron Moorhead and Justin Benson. If you're joining us for the first time, this is Watch Club, our weekly review series, kind of like a book club, but way better. Keep in mind, we will be going into full spoilers for this series and the MCU in general, so if you haven't watched this week's episode yet, be sure to do so, and then come right back in a snap. Now, before we all take our seats on the thrones of all time always, let me introduce you to the TVA personnel joining me today. First up, he's just in time, and he knows a little something about joint probability. He's Justin, the jet ski loving Lawrence.
You know, Nate, it's amazing that we're getting a fantastic MCU series from the events of the Hulk knocking Tony Stark on his ass and losing the Tesseract. Like, seriously, the course of events that have happened. Outstanding.
It's all the Hulk's fault. It's thank the Hulk. That's what we got to do. But joining us from across the timey-wimey cosmos, he puts the D in deoxyribonucleic acid. He's Darcy, the dispenser of diffusional tetrahydrocannabinol Hudson.
Okay, I'll take that. Wow, you went really scientific for this one.
You know what? I knew, because we have you on, and there's a lot of science.
Centuries, man. It's been centuries of learning for him.
Centuries for me to learn that. But I tried to even throw in a little bit of like, there's a weed pun in there. There's some.
I heard that.
Okay, we
caught
got
the
it.
cannabis,
Science
yeah.
with the weed pun too. I like it.
Amazing. I love it. Okay. And he's been here all along, always and forever. He's the maniacal, multiverse manipulating, throughput multiplier, Matt, the radioactive, residually rhizospheric Rorabeck.
I am enjoying a cup of hot chocolate, not from a machine. I made it with just some boiling water on my stove, but it's pretty good.
I'm not as impressed. If it was from a machine, you know, you could prune me, but
Thanks for having me, boys.
Matt,
Thanks
welcome
for
back to
coming,
the
man.
podcast.
Thanks for joining. Yeah,
It's been a long time.
I know, what, 2-3 years? I think it was WandaVision. I went the first MCU series, and now the most recent one. That's it. Every 4 years, I'll show up for one episode or something.
It's fantastic to have you back. It feels like no time has passed. But Matt, for those who are listening to the Geekcentric podcast who haven't had the pleasure of knowing you, who are you, and what are your sort of high-level thoughts on this season of Loki?
Yeah. Hello, everyone. I am Matt Rorabeck. I am the co-founder, host, and lead critic, sort of producer of the Untitled Movie Podcast and Untitled Movie Reviews. Please go subscribe on YouTube and podcast services everywhere. Yeah, and on Loki, God, what a goddamn show. I am a huge MCU fan. I've been obsessed since the beginning. In ebbs and flows, you know, almost fell off during the Ultron days. Came back during the lead up to Infinity War and Endgame and just was all in. And then now back into maybe the lower point of the MCU. But this show and the Marvels this weekend, I think, were a spark in kind of the darkness that we have right now of the MCU, where I am very optimistic for the future. I thought the Marvels was a blast. I think Loki Season 2 is up there with the best of the MCU. I think Loki Season 1 and Season 2 together, which I kind of consider them like, they've already said two halves of a whole, but like part 1, part 2, I think in the top 5 of the MCU for me. Like, I was kind of looking at it today going like, man, I think this is like right under maybe Spider-Man Homecoming and Infinity War in that kind of top 5 for me. I was absolutely obsessed from the beginning. It reminded me a lot of Lost. I've said this to a lot of people, which is my favorite TV show of all time.
It's the best show in the world.
Yeah, I'm so.
I really bring that on, everyone, just so everyone realizes.
I fucking am obsessed with Lost. So this show is very much up my alley. Just the way it plays with time. I love the aesthetic of everything. I love that, you know, even though it's added digital film grain, but I just love the production design and the look and the cinematography and the performances, and I'll go on and on and on, but I fucking love it. It's great.
Amazing.
Can I swear on this? Sorry.
Yeah,
Dude,
please.
100%.
Dude,
Yeah.
all
right.
You're under our R-rated episode content,
Okay,
so it's
cool.
okay. We have
All
a
right.
few, but we always love to
I
have
never
them.
know.
Ah,
But yeah,
it's free.
it's fucking awesome.
Yeah,
That's good.
there you go.
100%. And we have so much to talk about, and we will kind of go over it and over and over again in circles until we finally break the loop. But I'm stoked to get to discussing the finale. Just before we do, though, we here at Geekcentric do want to congratulate the SAG-AFTRA for fighting back and getting the contract they deserve, thus ending the strike. Without incredible actors, both in the foreground and background, we wouldn't have the fantastic shows and stories that we love so much. So we're stoked that now the strike is over. We'll continue to get some fantastic writing and excellent acting going forward. And it's such a refreshing feeling to go to do that. We usually do a disclaimer and we were talking. It felt like forever that we've been talking about the SAG strike. So we are so happy that it is finally over. Let's get into episode 6, the finale, titled Glorious Purpose, which, if you remember all the way back in the first episode of this series, the snake has finally bitten its own tail, as episode 1 was also titled Glorious Purpose. Special thanks to Jenna Anderson from comicbook.com for the assistance with this week's episode summary, which I've made a few modifications to better serve our breakdown. The Marvel Studios fanfare plays in reverse with an excellent score from Natalie Holt as we see the seconds before Timely's death. Loki time slips to that exact moment and tells the team that Timely needs to get out there. He dies anyways, just as he did before. And Loki asks Obi what they could have done differently, and Obi says they took too long. So to the disco funky sound of Walter Murphy's A Fifth of Beethoven, Loki slips back and tries to make things happen faster. Timely dies over and over and over again. He goes back even further when Timely first met Obi and hurries things along even faster. Loki asks Obi how long it would take him for him to learn everything Obi knows, and Obi and Victor Timely tell him it would take centuries. So let's talk about this opening sequence here. Matt, what did you think of the montage and seeing Victor Timely spaghettified over and over and over again?
Well, one, hilarious. Just that one visual of him over and over and over again. Just like the first time that happened, I remember in, what was it, episode 4, where that's the episodes they gave us as press, and that was kind of like the cliffhanger that they left us on. And I remember just being absolutely shocked, just seeing his body turned into spaghetti and seeing his jaw and his face, and it's just like, holy crap. And then seeing it over and over again just became more and more comical. Like Nate, what you brought up at the beginning of the show with Natalie Holt's kind of score kicking off with that reverse Marvel Studios logo, just right from the get-go, I'm like, holy shit, this is awesome already. And it's so something as simple as that. Like, I love when they mess with the Marvel Studios logo, but then just that music put me in the mood of just going, oh, we're gonna get something special here. And then it started off way more fun than I thought it would, actually. Yeah. Like with that needle drop of A Fifth of Beethoven and then going into the Groundhog Day sequence, which, you know, is a concept we've seen many times in Groundhog Day. And I mentioned when I did the kind of funny screencast, Palm Springs with Andy Samberg recently. I thought it was a great version of this kind of trope. But I think they do it really well here, where I thought it was way more fun than I was expecting this episode to be at the very beginning. I like seeing Loki do everything over and over again and just inch closer and closer to what he's supposed to be or what he's trying to accomplish. And you just know how many hundreds of thousands of times that he did every little thing over and over again just to gain an inch. And we'll get to that title card and what that kind of means after. But like, I thought it was really fun and a clever way of like trying to figure out how to get out of this kind of jam, especially now that Loki knew how to time slip and stuff like that. So I thought it was a lot of fun.
Yeah,
absolutely.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. I think, like, again, the opening fanfare with Natalie's music and it going in reverse, it's such a statement. It just felt so like, factual. Like it's like here we have something to say with this episode. So it was such a strong kickoff. And as you go into this sort of fun, as you said, like Groundhog Day montage, you're experiencing time differently, right? And like that's what's really funny about some of the sequences is that they all experience time differently, and you as an audience member experience it. So I love that they kick it off with this really fun vibe that then leads to, yes, a title card that had me sinking in my seat.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh. I love Mobius recognizing those moments too when Loki would say this time, and he's like,
Yeah.
this time, right? And yeah, I think it was the 8th or 9th attempt where we see his skin ripping off, and I could just imagine, you know, if Mobius had seen that, he would just be really, really upset. But I also, you know, I think I heard it clearer this time with Casey saying it wasn't me, which Alyssa pointed out in our previous Watch Club last week, which again is even further like the proof that like in their, even though their minds have been wiped over and over and over again, pieces of them still remain from across time and space. And that Frank Morris life bleeding into Casey, of him just feeling like, oh, they're going to blame me, because again, that's what he would be used to, of being a prison inmate. I just thought was so just, again, the attention to detail in this series is unbelievable.
I just really like how Matt mentioned how fun it felt, this opening, despite, you know, the stakes that we're dealing with in this finale episode. I think it's really cool though, because it kind of shows or mirrors almost Loki's journey through this one episode alone, where he's still very hopeful at the beginning, and there are options to solve this problem or issue, and then as the episode goes on, we see that hope kind of drain from him in all aspects of the way. So really cool way to tell the story in both sets of tone, as well as, you know, again, the descent that we see throughout the episode. So it was really cool.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and Jonathan Majors, just going back to the attention to detail thing, sorry, was the fact that he makes the exact same sound when he meets Obi is just fantastic. Like that same like that like excited noise that he makes. And I love seeing them interact. And we'll get to pumpkins. We got to we'll talk about pumpkins. But I wanted to also just point out, I never realized he called him Wizard.
Yeah.
I didn't realize that was his name for him. But let's keep going here. So according to the title card, centuries do pass for Loki, and he learns everything necessary to instruct Timely on the mission. He tells Casey to secure Timely's helmet, and that combined with all of Loki's new knowledge helps the walk go successfully. Timely is able to install the throughput multiplier, push the button, and make it back to the base. The loom begins stabilizing, but Obi notices that it's overloading again because there are way too many branches. Timely says that the multiverse is growing too fast for the loom to ever possibly handle it. Sylvie suggests that the creation of the branch timelines is what set this in motion, and Timely apologizes to Loki as the loom explodes once again. So I'm going to circle back to Matt here. I mean, this has got to be the craziest jump we've ever seen in the MCU, given that it took hundreds of years for Loki to figure this out. Do you think it's because he's a god that he was able to sustain that kind of experience? Because, like, I feel like a normal human being would go insane. Like, I feel like their brain would turn into mush.
Yeah, and I mean, I brought up Palm Springs, and then that was one of the darkest things in that movie, or even in Groundhog Day, when Bill Murray says he's been living, I think, like 10,000 years or something he mentions.
Yeah.
And like in Palm Springs, I think it's thousands of years, and you see how more Groundhog Day is more of a comedy, where Palm Springs plays it off a little bit more dramatically, but like yeah, it's just mind-boggling of like, and I think Loki being a god, someone who's lived, you know, thousands of years already, probably helps, right? A couple hundred years to a god who's lived a couple thousand years is basically what, like maybe a couple years for us.
Sure.
So I kind of do the stupid math that way of going, all right, well, we were locked in our homes for a couple years during COVID, and I'm like, and having to do the same shit over and over and over again. I'm like, maybe it's like the same for him. It's not that big of a deal. A couple hundred years. It's like, whatever. It's just like a couple years to us. But when you really think about it, it is pretty dark. Someone who, you know, has to live the same moments over and over and over again. And like I mentioned before, we see the results of that in this sequence as Loki, and the storytelling is so great because they don't have to, they are giving you all the information without giving you like an exposition dump or anything like that. Like it's told through Loki's mannerisms, right? We get that he's done this thousands of times for hundreds of years, and how every little thing, like you pointed out, Nate, like he just corrects people as they're saying a word or saying every little thing that has gone wrong in these thousands of times that he's done this before. To my point earlier, where he probably just every time got like an inch closer and then had to figure out what he needed to fix, and has just done this over and over. It would drive a normal person mad, but as we'll get to later in the episode, like Loki is not a normal human, and I think this sequence is just, again, brilliant of showing, the stakes there. It's sort of depressing, but it's still played in a fun way. Like even Loki going, okay, one more step forward, okay, and just
he's done it before, man. He's been there, and he knows the right coaching. Like that's what's so incredibly eerie about Hiddleston's performance in this, is just that level of urgency that you get, that sense, like you said, that he's lived this before. Right?
Yeah, and he knows every single thing. Like he's like, okay, Timely's about to put the thing down. Okay, please don't put it down.
I love how he's talking to him like he's a little kid. Like, remember?
That's what I said.
No,
I didn't put
don't
it. Don't
touch
put
your
it down.
stitches. You know what I mean? Like he's just gone to the dentist or something.
And that's perfect, because he's done this hundreds and thousands of times. So, and then learning about the throughput multiplier not being able to expand because of the infinite amount of timelines, I think it is cool. And the whole concept of the throughput multiplier, and I've said this on other shows about Loki specifically, like they did a really good job with the like mumbo jumbo, like that, like the scientific nonsense that they kind of spew, where I'm like, I get it, it's just a thing, there's a bunch of strands, it can't hold them together, and they like simplified the multiverse, I think, in the best way anyone has done so far. So I just thought the sequence was
good
great.
Yeah, I agree.
I mean, you mentioned Groundhog Day and Palm Springs, but this episode, like a lot of this season, had me thinking of Doctor Who vibes. And one of my favorite Doctor Who stories, he's trapped in his own time dial for billions of years, and just the sense of your sense of will that'll keep you going forward. And I think that is what I'm boiling it down to, because if you look at Kang, he's probably, or He Who Remains, he's been sitting up there for hundreds of years too.
Oh, yeah.
And as we see later on in this episode, that kooky, quirky guy we got in the first season may have just been an act all along. He is still very sane and with it and all together. So again, I think it's a sense of will that kept Loki going strong for hundreds of years. He knows he has this purpose he needs to fulfill and achieve, and he's going to do anything it takes to get there. And again, the way that we see him grow, or how these multiple time loops have affected him and his growth and stuff like that, was so well done, and I loved it. Yeah,
and just going from like that fun montage, that Groundhog Day sequence, into a title card, like centuries. You've seen time pass so much, and then when you hit that title card to know how much more time passed, it's a gut punch. And then when you bounce back and you see this Loki that's just, he feels like he's so in control, like to the point where he's kind of interjecting his point to speed up the process. Like, he's like, oh, yep, I know you're gonna make a joke here, Mobius, about me. I'm coming for your job. Like, it's just, it's those things where it's like, he knows he's done this before. He's walking the motions. But yeah, I think Will is definitely that. I think that's what's very much is attributed to why we see him at the end of this episode, where we see him. Because I think being a god, like time must work differently for gods in a lot of ways. So I imagine centuries wouldn't have been that much for someone like him.
Well, it's just another cool way, I think, similar to the Stones in the first season, that the writers of this show just sort of say, like, hey, these things that seem like insanely crazy, well, we're going to just sort of make them small. And that's what this title card does at the same time, where yes, it is centuries later, but technically in the grand scheme of things, it's really nothing. And it doesn't, it only just shows how much he has to go through. I think the biggest question I have, though, is pumpkins. Matt, why does Victor Timely say pumpkins?
I have no fucking idea why he says pumpkins. I remember I was watching it with my wife the night it premiered, and she's like, did he just say pumpkins? And I'm like, I think so. And we
died laughing.
And I was like, I was like, was it a saying back then of like, I don't know. But Nate, you brought up a great point too about the title card. Cause like, I remember even in like Endgame seeing the like 5 years later thing, and that being like, holy fuck, 5 years. It's like, and now you're seeing centuries later and you're like, it's nothing for Loki. And then the other thing I keep thinking about too is that we've seen this concept, and I love that everything comes back around. And even though we don't have to keep going to Thanos and the Infinity Stones and the Infinity Saga, but like, you know, Doctor Strange essentially does this exact thing at the end of the first Doctor Strange movie, right? Like he lives, I don't know how many years fighting Dormammu over and over and over again, right? Like enough years where his hair goes gray, like on the side. So like the decades at least, probably, I think, maybe not. He ages like a human, so maybe not too long, but still for I know he's a wizard as well, but like it's just I just, that concept of him seeing all the different outcomes too when he's using the time stone being green, like I love that thematically it all kind of ties back together, even though they're doing something completely different and trying to kind of, it's just building upon, again, when we get to the end of this show and how it, you know, comes full circle for a character we've had for 15 years almost. And I think it builds on some concepts that they've had throughout the whole 15 years of the MCU and stuff too, which I think is really, really cool.
Yeah.
Pumpkins.
Pumpkins was wild. I couldn't believe he said that.
The reason I laughed even more though, because I mean, well, it's not a spoiler, but just if you get a chance to watch on Netflix, Blue Eye Samurai, there's something that has to do with pumpkins. I think in the second or third episode.
First episode. It's
in the first episode. Okay,
Yeah.
You just have to watch the first episode. I think it's up on YouTube if you don't have Netflix. But watch the first episode of Blue Eye Samurai on Netflix, and you're gonna laugh when you
watch the whole thing because it's really, really good. If you like samurai
absolutely
things,
cool.
And that's more to you, Matt. I think you'd enjoy it.
Okay.
But let's keep going with this show. Loki goes back in time to the events of the season 1 finale and tries to stop Sylvie from stabbing He Who Remains. He tells Sylvie she was right for not trusting him and tells her that he doesn't care about reclaiming a throne anymore. She threatens that she'll only stop if he kills her. And Loki repeats the cycle multiple times over, trying to stop Sylvie at increasingly earlier and earlier moments. Loki asks He Who Remains, why isn't he trying to stop Sylvie? And He Who Remains uses his temp pad to pause Sylvie. He reveals that he knows about Loki's time slipping and says that his death at the hands of Sylvie is all part of his plan because he will reincarnate anyways. He says reincarnation, baby, just like he does in the finale of the first season. He Who Remains resumes time, and Loki reveals that he's already had this particular conversation with He Who Remains. So Matt, this is where my brain starts hurting thinking of everything going on, but. And like this is where, and I listened to your discussion with the Kind of Funny guys, and this is where I'm like, I feel very Tim Geddes right now in trying to just dissect all these little details that seemingly don't matter, but that's what we do on this show. So would it really be reincarnation of the same He Who Remains if the one in the past dies? I mean, how can he retain his memories past death? I don't understand.
I think because time isn't really moving in the same way because it is outside time, right? It is at the end of time, and even the way that Loki has been time slipping in the TVA, I think it's like it just works slightly. This is I could be completely wrong.
No, you're
too,
wrong.
but
That's
how
what
I'm
I was
wrapping,
thinking. Yeah.
Yeah, how I'm wrapping my brain around it is that it essentially is the same He Who Remains, because it's not like in the timelines where if you go and change something, it causes a branch. Like I think what we've seen, especially with that first Ouroboros scene as well, which I was confused originally on the first episode of the Kind of Funny screencast that I did.
Yeah.
Of like, well, is when Loki goes back and talks to Ouroboros there in the past, but it's then he has the loom and stuff beside him, and it's almost like changing things in real time almost. And then I took it as like sort of like Lost or any time travel movie where you go back and it's like it always happened that way, right? And you could go either way here of like it's always happened this way, and I think we don't have all the puzzle pieces yet either, depending on where they go with Kang and He Who Remains, of being like, was this all part of his plan? Did he know this was going to happen? Did he know that? But like I consider it the same He Who Remains because Loki's actually going back to that moment and changing the timeline in real time. So I don't know about retaining memories and things like that, but I just assume that he's always one step ahead and he kind of knew what Loki was going to do. It's like, again, 3D chess, time chess of going like, well, I knew he was going to learn how to do that and do this because he'd want to stop me. That means he'd go back here and stop Sylvie, and then we'd have this conversation, and I knew what he would want to talk about because he sees everything, because it's like a non-linear. I'm getting even confused talking about this. Anyway, I have no idea, but that's kind of like my word vomit of going like, I think it is technically the same He Who Remains. You're just undoing that moment, and it continues on into the future. And then he kind of knowing, because he's probably done all of this before similarly in different ways through how he had to master time, that he knew what Loki was going to do, right? The paving the way thing and the script in the first season and all that kind of stuff, like I'm still trying to wrap my head around, because again, it is outside of time. And was this all still part of his plan is what I'm thinking still, right? Like, are we going to get a reveal down the line in Kang Dynasty, or in a thing where it is a full snake eating its own tail, where it's like, no, this is exactly what I wanted to happen, and then we're going to get some moment where it's like they end up in the exact same place? I have no idea. Anyway, someone else go.
You mentioned the script, and that's where I was kind of explaining away this whole thing, is that like we only saw what Kang was showing Sylvie and Loki with the script there. So what's to say there wasn't more to that story that he has in his back pocket and knows that down the road this might happen or something like that. Again, going back to Doctor Who, they always talk about fixed points in time and how something will have to happen, but how it happens can change. And
Okay.
that's how, again, you'll get these things that will have to happen at some point and will shape the future going forward, like the breaking of the loom, or that the branching of the timelines that had to happen at some point. And then this is just Loki's way of now understanding and getting to that point himself, whereas Kang was already there. Loki is caught up to him almost. It's, again, the fact that they're outside of time, like you said, Rorabeck, it is definitely boiling down around that, where time does not flow the same as it does outside of the, or in the actual timelines. This is, it's ever changing and constantly fluid and always in flux based on who's there and doing what type thing. So again, hopefully this all does get explained at some point. Otherwise, these theories will constantly get more and more wild, as I can only imagine.
Well, from the vomit that Rorabeck you got there, the chunks. There's a couple good chunks there, and I think the biggest one is the fact that they exist outside of time. These two characters are now actually of the same power set, if you will, which I think is that one up where he stops with his temp pad and says, "Listen, I know what you're doing here," and then Loki's like, you think I don't know what you're doing here, right? So I think that there's that sort of play of like, they're kind of on opposite ends of, as you said, a chessboard, using these powers in a way to wield the results that they want. And we don't, like you said, we don't fully know what He Who Remains really wants with the next multiversal war and whatnot. And how will Loki potentially maybe play into that in the future? But that said, I think that's why the existing of reincarnation and the memories of for He Who Remains, they stay, and he's able to continue going, is because he's someone who exists out of time.
Wow. I mean, well, after all that vomit, I think I fully understand how it works. I again, it's one of those things where like I feel like I'm like Loki, like I'm gonna have to study it for centuries to fully understand.
Absolutely.
Yes.
But I do love the writing in this moment, and Tom just I love. He absolutely kills the line of "I can't be trusted," followed immediately by "You have to believe me," and I just think it's so Loki. It's so well done. Again, the writing is just unbelievable. Or like when he says, "The last thing I want is a throne," is just a beautiful little subtle hint at kind of the outcome of the show. I think the other interesting thing when He Who Remains says "See you again," it's like he's talking to Loki, mocking him over and over and over again, or see you soon. Yeah, see you soon. Yeah. And then the other detail I didn't personally recognize, but I do want to shout out Eric Voss on this one, because I really love highlighting the attention to detail in this show and just how next level it is. And a lot of writers and a lot of people that script these shows and work on these shows probably don't pay attention to this kind of detail. So the elevator scene when He Who Remains uses his temp pad in season 1, she goes to stab him in the elevator, and he uses his temp pad to, like, I guess, sort of time teleport out of the way. But here he dodges it because he knows that Loki is going to stop it in this instance.
Because he's time slipping.
And that's absolutely unreal. Like, it's just kudos to the writers for staying on top of stuff like that, to be able to sort of recognize that, hey, no, it wouldn't play out the same way because he's in a different place mentally. He knows different things. It's unreal. Okay, let's keep going here. He Who Remains pauses time again and reveals that everything in the loom is actually irrelevant to the sacred timeline. So Loki has been wasting his time. Loki decides to change the equation by breaking the loom, but He Who Remains says the loom is the only thing stopping the multiversal war that destroys everything, and that he's offering the universe mercy. Loki refuses to believe that and insists he's going to find another way. He Who Remains resumes time and tells Loki to make the hard choice to let Sylvie kill him, or to kill her, and they can protect what they can. So, like, this is where I start to sort of, I try to put my hand in the ring for the 3D space time chess. But is He Who Remains baiting Loki the same way he did Sylvie into continuing his ultimate goal? I mean, the multiversal war, we can all agree, is Secret Wars, right? So it's inevitable that no matter what He Who Remains says or does, it's going to happen because it did happen. Matt, what do you think?
Yeah, I mean, I had that same question too on other shows of going, is this multiversal war that's potentially coming the exact same one, or is it a different one? So, like, that's the whole full circle thing again. Yeah, you make a great point that I haven't even thought about, Nate, where, him even mentioning the loom and that, like, well, it's the safe thing that's gonna restore the thing, almost gives Loki the idea that he could break it and release the timeline.
He's got the math up on the wall, and
yeah,
you know what I mean? Like, it's almost like trying to like it's like a magician, right? Trying to like put your eyes in one spot so that you'll look at another spot or what have you, right?
Because then that's the thing. If he knows this multiversal war is going to happen, that's ultimately how he gained power, right? He won that multiversal war.
Right.
So if his plan all along is to actually have that happen, but then maybe he could have just, this is the thing, is like, well, okay, he could have just released all the Kang variants at any time. Why did he need Loki to do it and things like that? So I guess if it's going to happen, he still thinks he's going to win at the end. But yeah, my brain does start to hurt thinking about it. And I'm sure we'll talk about theories of where it's going to go in the future, but yeah, I'm not entirely sure.
I feel like like you're on there with the point of saying that this is going to be different. I think that's what Secret Wars is meant to be, is the different multiversal battle, the changing of the stakes. I think He Who Remains is tired of winning against his own variants, that he wants a new player on the chessboard that he can fight and go against, and that might be Loki. And I think in very much this conversation, and especially given the fact that, like, when we first are introduced to He Who Remains and he stops time, there's that theatricality, there's that sense of, like, pristine and who he was in the first season.
Wizard of Oz, essentially.
Yeah, exactly. And then as soon as he, Loki reveals his card, right? Suddenly, he relaxes. He suddenly loses that persona. He becomes a little more lax, and he basically is just straight with Loki, because I think he sees him now as an equal. He sees an equal across there that has matched and done what he has, quote unquote, set up, and maybe he hasn't entirely. I also think that maybe He Who Remains was bluffing a bit to say that he knows, but he's starting to recognize that this is, the events keep slowly changing, and that's why he's suddenly like, you don't think I don't know that you're time slipping? So who knows? I think that the multiversal war is meant to be something different this time around. And I think that's why we're seeing Secret Wars around the corner, and how incursions
around the corner
and things like
eventually.
That. Well,
yeah.
Maybe to Loki, it's around the corner.
Yeah, down the road. Okay, like down the road to Secret Wars.
Yeah.
I wanted to jump on one thing Justin said too, which I think is interesting. Of like He Who Remains finally kind of respecting Loki, or going, oh shit, he is kind of one step ahead of me. There's that one moment where I forget the quote that he
It's the
says.
one I
it's
said at
from.
the
The one
top.
that he said.
Yeah. Okay, perfect. And then where you can see Who Remains be like, what
Okay.
the fuck are you even talking about?
Yeah.
And then like in that whole conversation when he starts, actually talking like himself, and I think even a little bit of jealousy too, because Loki being a god and being able to control time just organically, like through his powers, where he has to use technology, I think is even an interesting kind of in that 3D chess kind of thing of being like, oh shit, okay, he did figure this stuff out. Okay, I respect that. And like he is moving a little further than I thought he might have, after I thought maybe they just kill me and then this would happen. But I think it's interesting even, him having to use tech and the temp pad, and Loki just being able to organically like manipulate time, I think is cool.
I mean, going off that, I think it just goes back to that first Thor movie where magic is just science that's so far ahead we can't understand it.
Yes.
It's
Yeah.
almost along the same lines where Loki has that baked into him. So it's really cool to see him using that power to become almost an equal, or just equal to Kang in terms of how much they can control time. But what I think, you mentioned Secret Wars, and of course this is clearly building up to the second Secret Wars series, not the first one. Because
Yeah.
the first one was just a crazy alien making a planet to have a bunch of people fight on, and that was his little side project. Whereas this is clearly leading up to almost like Loki taking the role of God Emperor Doom.
Yes.
And that he has saved the universe and
That was my
reformed it
theory. Yeah.
into his own creation. And that may not work out down the line. Again, we were talking about how can one guy take all this power and everything through him and work with it. So I think it's gonna be really neat to see how this goes into Secret Wars, because it definitely is related, but I don't think it'll be at all similar to what we've seen in the comics.
Sure.
Mm-hmm.
I still feel like there's something there's between He Who Remains and another character that I will get to later. It does feel like there's some sort of nudging going on, like especially when the moment he says, I think I caught it in my second watch through, of like, I made the tough choices, that's why I get the big chair, and just the idea of like, by the end of this, Loki makes a tough choice and gets the big chair. So something in my mind, just, I don't know. The other thing that I wanted to call out as well, and just bringing back the idea that I mentioned earlier with Casey sort of through time, and we've talked about it in this show, but I like again, just another little attention to detail thing, the nod to young Victor Timely, where I think it's like the moment after Loki sort of one-ups him, if you will. Victor Timely licks his finger and then puts out an imaginary candle. And I just think that's such an interesting aspect to it, of like, He Who Remains does that. And it's just an interesting aspect of calling back to the candle maker that Victor Timely could have been. I don't know. Maybe it's just a neat nod, but
I love that. I love the way Majors made fun of his portrayal, because so many people have made fun of his portrayal of Victor Timely as just being hokey and a little too, like, it doesn't seem right for the MCU, if you will. But I love that in this moment, He Who Remains is sort of mocking him by doing it. So
so well
it's
done.
an interesting callback.
No, I mean, even going back to the post credits in Quantum Mania, like my one thing going into this series was just like, I'm not sold on the whole He Who Remains or Kang being like the big bad, just because like obviously he gets punked out by Ant-Man in Quantum Mania, and I'm like, that doesn't really, like, no offense to Ant-Man, but I'm like, this guy's supposed to be like the next like huge threat. And then I'm like, then you get to those post-credit scenes and with Victor Timely and all the other Kang variants, just I rewatched that scene and it just still doesn't sit well with me, even though I love the character He Who Remains, and I even liked parts of Kang the Conqueror in Quantum Mania. But when I've seen all the other variants so far, I'm like, I'm not really threatened by these jabronis. Like, I just like, I don't know. Like, they're so, it screams parody. I forget, Justin, I think you mentioned that before we were on air, where, you probably weren't referencing this, but every time I see that scene and I think of like, this show does a really good job of actually making me feel like he's a threat, especially the He Who Remains version and with the timelines and stuff. But when I go back to that sequence in Victor Timely in this show, and all those ones, I'm like, man, it screams like Nutty Professor or something like that to me, where I'm just like, I can't take this seriously and I want to.
Yeah. And unfortunately, I think that comes from the comics themselves, because there are so many versions of Kang that we've been introduced to, and a lot of times he is trumped by one-off little kid, or a bunch of kids working together to fight this big bad. So unfortunately, Kang will be jokey as much as he is imposing. We just haven't seen enough of that imposing side of him yet. So I totally agree where I'm still not buying it. Knowing the comics, I know there is potential there. They're just not doing a very good job of bringing that to the screen.
It would have been really interesting to see, the Marvels just recently came out, and I believe, correct me if I'm wrong, but the Marvels and Quantumania were entangled themselves, right? They had to swap places, I believe, from when they were released. So, like, if you think about it, we would have been talking and just done our review for Quantumania going at the same time this finale is dropping. Like, if they did, like, I'm wondering if that was always their plan. From a production standpoint?
I think
it
was.
probably
Right?
was. I think if they didn't have to have that movie come out earlier, it was sort of done.
Yeah.
It was rushed.
But yeah, but I don't hate that movie, but I also just think there's a ton of problems with it. But yeah, it would have been great if they could have timed that stuff out properly.
Might have
Would've
worked
hit more
better.
Yeah.
Pandemic, strikes, all that kind of stuff.
Visual effects. All right. So Loki time slips to the events of the season 1 premiere when Mobius was showing him his life in the Time Theater. Loki asks Mobius how the TVA decides who lives and who dies. Mobius tells Loki a story about the TVA finding a variant in the Black Sea who was just hanging out with his brother, going about his day, and just kind of being on his own. And he was going to be responsible for thousands of deaths. And it's just a little boy. One hunter, Mobius, hesitated in killing the boy, and it made things worse. And it turned out that his partner, who is Renslayer, just totally nuked the kid. Loki tells Mobius, pruned the kid, whatever. Loki tells Mobius that purpose might be more of a burden than a glory. And he thanks Mobius, shakes his hand, and just before, he thanks Mobius and shakes his hand just before he and the reality around them fade out of existence. This is a really, I think, beautiful, touching moment in the episode. Really lovely sequence. I love that we get to see this moment again, and I think it adds so much meaning to why Loki time slipped to that time theater in the last episode when he wasn't really in control of his time slipping again. Something inside him knew that place was special. But I gotta ask, and I'm gonna throw this to anyone who wants to answer here: who the heck is the boy with the brother in the Black Sea who was responsible for thousands of deaths? Darcy.
Mine is just the loosest guess based on where the Black Sea is geographically and where Latveria is supposed to be in the Marvel. It's moved around a bunch, but Eastern Europe is basically where it is. So maybe it's a young Doctor Doom, but I don't know if Doctor Doom ever had a brother. Like,
right.
That's really the only.
But maybe in that timeline he did.
Maybe, yeah. And I don't know. That's the only thing I could think of when they said Black Sea.
Right.
I know, but is there a chance it could be Loki? Because there's a poetic nature to this whole him being in this room, interrogating Loki, finding a new way to talk to a variant of Loki, the boy that he couldn't kill, that Renslayer killed. And we know Renslayer already has a relationship with Loki variants given Sylvie, right? So is this something that she sort of was doing? She was just going to resolve all of these different Loki variants,
take out all
because
the
of the events
early.
Yeah, because of the events that happened on that boat that Mobius couldn't commit to that pruning. And now we just sort of see its own Ouroboros sort of happening, where it's a moment for Mobius to be in this situation. But yeah, so this was such a beautiful scene, man. Such great dialogue.
Yeah, I had the same thought, Justin, where I originally hearing that, I'm like, oh, two brothers young, like one brother's responsible for a bunch of deaths. I'm like, that tracks for Loki. And that was like, okay, well, I hesitated and it caused a bunch of variants like very, very quickly.
We saw so many last season, right?
Yeah. And that could have been the beginning of the cause of all those kind of Loki variants. And I don't know why Loki and Thor and Odin, maybe they're just having a beach day in the Black Sea. Like, I don't know.
They
coming
visit
down to,
Earth
like,
sometimes. Come on.
Yeah.
They vacation.
So it
Maybe
could
in that
be.
timeline
Like,
they did, because Thor hadn't been to Earth in a long time in the first movie. So,
yeah, there you
yeah.
go.
So it is a variant. So yeah, whether they, were on Earth in the Black Sea for whatever reason, I was thinking, okay, trying to think of the mythology of or Thor and Odin and stuff. And I'm like, the Black Sea doesn't really make sense for any of that stuff. So I think if they wanted it to be Loki, I feel like they'd give us more hints towards that, like that it would make sense, or they would just flat out say, because if Mobius knew that it was Loki, he'd have this weird connection that I feel like maybe would have come up, although he remembers this story even though his memory's been wiped, so it was in the last kind of loop, so it was more recent. Anyways, but yeah, I had the same thought at the time stuff, man. It really fucks with you. But I did have that same thought where I'm like, oh, that would be really kind of like fitting if it was Loki as a kid.
Yeah, I just want to like stick with this scene for just a couple seconds, because the writing is outstanding. Like you already quoted it, man. Most purpose is more burden than glory. Like, just absolutely beautiful. And then there's no comfort. Just you have to choose your burden, and just the sort of closure to this moment. Like, I don't know about you guys, but like watching this entire episode up until this point, that I was like, oh my God, are we closing out characters? Are we
like
wrapping
this is a series finale?
Yes, this is where it started to feel like a series finale. And especially given the fact that I'm imagining, and I'm sure you guys are with me there, but when he shakes his hand, he's obviously killing that timeline, right? Like he's eliminating that timeline, that branch that he slipped into. Is that kind of what's happening there?
I think so. I mean, I think in the grand scheme of things, maybe it doesn't fully, matter, but I think it's really pretty. I think it was really like sad and pretty at the same time, that melancholy feeling that you get. I also love that Mobius couldn't prune the kid because he saw him playing with his brother, and something inside of him stopped him. And it was the fact that it's his kids. Right, he has two kids that are, I think we talked about this last week, they're very similar to various aspects of Loki and Thor in just kind of what they say and what they do. So I think that's, again, the writing in this series and the way that they sort of have that follow through with these characters and these moments is just unbelievable. And to think that episode 5, apparently, I'm just hearing this now, that it was like, that's not the original episode.
Yeah, they had to rewrite it.
He rewrote it in a weekend.
The whole plan was nuked by the overseers at Disney.
They pruned it.
Or Marvel. It was the Marvel Trust
Yeah.
Head is what they call it. So it's like the executive producing team. And I think they have their own story team that keeps track of all of these things. So they just kind of apparently blew it up. And I did watch a brief video on New Rockstars that kind of hypothesized about what that could have been. They have some really great theories about how it could have kind of been very... We're revisiting different points in the MCU timeline based on when we run into our characters and where they are.
It's expensive
in the timeline. So yeah, it's expensive, and it could be probably pricey in terms of a visual effects heavy sort of thing. But who knows? But apparently it had people talking, right? That were just like, whoa, like out of that story treatment, episode 5 is the best, right? So it's like,
wow. I'm happy with at least how Mobius was treated throughout these last 2 episodes and into this sort of final sequence with him. Loki goes back to right before everyone disappeared in episode 5 and pulls Sylvie out of time to talk with her about the situation. Sylvie argues that sometimes you need to destroy something in order to replace it with something better. Loki time slips back to right before Timely's walk and locks Sylvie and Mobius behind the door to the vault. He tells them now he knows what kind of god he needs to be, and embarks on the walk by himself with no spacesuit. As he goes out onto the gangway, his clothes transform into a new version of his Loki costume. Or his suit. I guess we should call it a suit. Give him some respect. He uses his powers to zap the loom and realizes he can physically grab and reignite each of the dying branches. He creates a crack in space-time, which he walks towards and then eventually through. And Sylvie says that Loki is giving them a chance. Loki walks towards a throne carrying the branches with him. The throne begins to turn gold, and we see that it's the remains of He Who Remains Palace. Loki sits on the throne and holds the branches together, allowing them to begin to heal. We pan out, and we see that we've been looking at the branches from the wrong angle. They now form Yggdrasil, also known as the World Tree. Matt, you mentioned earlier sort of just how long we've been on this journey with Loki. I think Tom Hiddleston said, 14 years of his life. And it's just incredible how well it's been handled, surprising, and especially by this series. It's such an incredible end for this character that started off so selfish, and now he's committed like such a selfless act. I want to start with Matt. What does this mean for Loki? And is this where he sits for all time, always?
Well, first off, what a goddamn sequence.
Geez.
Just Natalie Holt's music and just this starting and his fucking TVA suit ripping off and he just getting the fucking horns built from He Who Remains kind of like palace and this dope ass Loki full on suit like you mentioned, Nate. Like it's the coolest thing I've ever seen, probably.
Loafers.
Yeah, those cool ass loafers.
Dude, he
come
stylish.
on, man.
He was so stylish. I couldn't believe it.
I'm like,
yeah.
It was awesome. Like him getting his like superhero like costume moment, and which we've seen in a lot of these MCU shows that have waited until the last episode to kind of give us that. But like this was like his hero moment, and finally his glorious purpose, like all coming full circle for 15 years of storytelling, like a character that started off as just the annoying brother in Thor and then being the main villain in Avengers. And even though this is technically a different version, it's still kind of the same version because I'm going to start being confused by time again. And because it is just the same character we knew up until Avengers, just went on a different path. And we saw the little bits and pieces throughout Dark World and Ragnarok and into Infinity War and an Endgame of like his face turn, but the way it was played out in this show and having this moment and Justin, you mentioned like when you started to realize that this was a series finale, not a season finale. I'm like, right when this moment starts, it's really like, oh shit, no, this is the end of this.
Yeah, that's where you're
probably.
Like, it's official. It's official.
Like they shouldn't. And now I'm getting to your question, Nate. Sorry, I'm long-winded, but like, him grabbing it becoming his cape and him sitting down and becoming like a battery for the multiverse, essentially, which is like not giving him enough credit. He is the god of stories, which everyone's talking about. I always thought it was the god of time or the god of the multiverse, but the god of stories, and him essentially powering the multiverse is so insanely cool. And finally getting that throne and the gold coming up, like it's such a fitting, perfect end for this character. And I can't believe he got his like I am Iron Man snap moment, and it like skyrocketed him to like I think might be like is easily one of the best characters in the history of the MCU, up there with Iron Man and Captain America, and maybe even past Thor at this point. I'm gonna throw that out there. Personally, like I think his character arc is Thor's been great too. I love Chris Hemsworth. I love the kind of different vibes that each of the Thor movies bring, but like I was so blown away with this moment. I really do hope, like I'd be fine if this is the end, if this is the last time we see Loki, him taking this throne and now he is the overseer of the multiverse and the god of stories. I don't think that's going to be the case. Like even though Tom Hiddleston's pretty much been like, no, I'm 14 years, this is the perfect end. Like there's no way we don't get one more Thor Loki scene.
Yeah, we have to.
I don't think I would be fine if it's like in Secret Wars. Like I hope we don't see him until Secret Wars or something like that. Like give us that much time and have Thor. Like Thor had to go to Neverlear for the fucking star, right? Needle-Lavir. God, the Thor planet names really mess me up too. But that moment of like Thor having to travel to get Stormbreaker, and I think I want that moment with like Thor having to go to Loki at the end of time and have that moment, but Loki not necessarily being involved like back on the timeline. I'd be cool with, but that's my spiel.
I mean, I'd love it if this is the end of character as well. It is very fitting for him. I also see, a lot of potential for more stories to be told. The fact that his magic is now literally entwined throughout the multiverse. How many Loki variants are going to try and usurp him from this position and use the power for
Ooh.
their own? Because I feel like that already is ripe potential for storytelling, because Loki is kind of a bad guy at the start of most stories, at least. So even with when he's pulling the branches up there at the end, and this scene, I like the amount of exertion he's going through. It almost looks like he's aging at the one point. And it looks
Yes.
very much like Richard E. Grant when he says the glorious
Yep.
purpose line from last season. So this is a really cool moment for the character. Like you said, 14 years leading to this point, I'd be fine if this is the last time we see him. But I also think that with the position he's in now, he is going to be more integral than ever to the Secret Wars. And I wouldn't be surprised if he's the one who's kind of pulling these heroes together to fight maybe the all the Kang variants are on the lower roots where it looks like the time is dying out, whereas all the heroes we know are on the lovely lush part of the tree on the top. So it'd be cool if that would be the Secret Wars, is the roots trying to overtake the branches up top or something. I don't know.
Yeah.
It's neat. It's a really cool idea for the story, and the fact that we got Yggdrasil back in the MCU in a more like realized form, I love it.
Not just Thor's drawing to
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely.
Now this is actually a thing that connects the realms and stuff, and feels closer to the comic book origin of Yggdrasil and the World Tree. So really cool.
so good.
Yeah, I think of all the theories that we had throughout these watch clubs, I said that I feel like this was going to give closure and sort of park Loki, and just this is where Loki is, and I feel like this is what this scene does. First off, just the entire moment, it is like clearly it is some of the best visual storytelling. The cinematography is outstanding. The lighting is incredible. The music, the way it comes in, Natalie Holt's score, it's on fire in the scene. Like, it is so friggin' good. And his costume, I wrote a note. It reminded me of He Who Remains costume. It had that sort of cloth, the scarves, the sort of
Regal.
tailored look to it. Yeah, regal. It's its own vibe. It even had the slippers, because I know he had slippers like that, like those loafers.
Okay.
Yeah, so it's like he has this sort of own style to it. So it's incredible to see him sort of becoming what he didn't want to become, like the He Who Remains, but he now is and by extension, I love the idea of telling the God of Stories story through the idea that he is now in control of the multiverse, because the multiverses are stories, right? Like it's just sort of like you could time and stories are, you can kind of create a correlation between those two words, and it feels very fitting. This is his approach, and given the fact that He Who Remains saw himself as a script writer, you know what I mean? It kind of adds to that sort of dichotomy of a different type of writing. So I love that they were able to kind of give you all of this in these moments and kind of send it off. But I'm with you. I think Darcy, I think that they've parked Loki at a place where he's very important. Things are happening around him with the TVA and whatnot, but they've parked him, and I think he'll come back when they need him to. And I would be fine if they waited quite some time before they tried to bring him back. Don't do a Grogu. Don't bring him back in someone else's show, and then suddenly he's important
Somehow
again.
Loki has returned.
Yeah, exactly.
No,
So.
don't bring that up. But I want to kind of just also talk a little bit about how, especially in episode 5, the sequence with him talking to Sylvie at the bar, and you get that amazing performance from Tom when he says that he doesn't know where he belongs, and he doesn't want to be alone. And I think it's interesting. He's more powerful than he could ever have imagined. But because he always imagined that power as self-serving, but here he's facing the thing he fears most in order to keep the people he loves most alive, and he has to be alone. I went back and rewatched some of the scenes from Thor 1, and you can see, like, really the inception, like the fear that of being alone comes from the fact that when he was born, he was immediately left alone in Jotunheim as a baby, right? And so it's just crazy how consistent they've kept this character throughout his entire arc, that loneliness all the way back from birth is kind of where they pulled that from. I just think it's fantastic. And the way they use the line from Thor 1, I know this has kind of been floating around on the internet. I've seen a few folks kind of call it out. Our friends at the Movie Podcast made a wonderful social post on it as well. But the line when Loki is hanging on the Bifrost in Thor 1, and he says to his father, "For you, for everyone," the fact that he's saying it to Mobius and Sylvie here, again, the two most important people to him in this new chapter of his life, and the fact that he's kind of saying it to Sylvie, which is him. So is that like self-actualization in that moment, I guess.
Well, I really enjoyed the fact that, there's almost a triad of one-on-one conversations. The first is between him and He Who Remains, his counterpart, his equal, his opposite, maybe even, if you would say, right? And then he has a conversation with Mobius, who's very much a mentor, who's inspired Loki to be on this better path ever since the Battle of New York.
Mhm.
And then you have him talking to essentially a variant of himself, but I think we know that there's sort of a romantic thing that's kind of there. So you could argue there's something about a love, just sort of the idea of telling her what he needs to do,
Mhm.
so that he can very much save the bigger picture, as Mobius had said. So in a lot of ways, there's such a finite closure to this journey, that when it comes to this moment and he's looking at the both of them, it just reminds you why he went to those moments, to get their approval, to seek their guidance, if you will.
And one final shout out to the final hair flip of the season, of the series. When he's about to go out on the gangway at the very end.
Oh, yeah.
And you get to see it. I literally took a moment, paused, and was like,
Yeah.
final hair flip. Really
Yeah.
but let's kind of get to the ending here. Sometime after, and I love how it just says after with a period. The TVA is back to normal and is viewing the timeline as sort of a tree, the world tree. Miss Minutes is back to normal, though they don't know if they can trust her. Mobius reveals that they've been keeping tabs on He Who Remains variants, including one who is seemingly, or it says seemingly, but is the Kang from Quantum Mania. Mobius tells Hunter B-15 that he's leaving to go experience the real world, and she tells him that he'll always have a seat at the TVA. The TVA meet. Obi gets new copies of the TVA handbook. A young Victor Timely does not get the book delivered to him, sending him down a different path. Ravonna wakes up in the void and finds remnants of the TVA floor there. She also looks over and sees a pyramid and then some other stuff. She sees Eliath in action, but she's not afraid. She almost looks determined.
John Locke.
What's that? John Locke?
John Locke
Yeah,
moment.
okay.
Yeah.
Sure. Yeah, very much a smoke monster. Mobius watches over a life where his human self and kids are happy, and Sylvie's by his side. They talk about Loki and what the future can look like for all of them. Sylvie leaves as Mobius continues to watch over his house and let time flow. And then we see Loki sitting proudly on his throne, finally truly burdened with glorious purpose. So let's get into this ending here. Matt, what did you think of the kind of where all of our different characters ended up, and the suggestion that the TVA is now keeping tabs on as many Kang variants as they can?
Yeah, I mean, I love the reinvention of the TVA. I'm curious we kind of know that they're going to pop up in Deadpool 3. That's not confirmed, but pretty much
assumed.
Was
it
confirmed.
leaked?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah,
Mobius,
I think so.
Mobius is apparently supposed to be in it,
Yeah.
so that's what throws this
Owen
sort of
Wilson
out
is.
of a loop. Yeah, right. Owen Wilson is supposed to be in it. So is it him, or is it a variant, or is this?
No, I think that's just I hope that there's no season 3 of Loki, like we already talked about. I hope the TVA is just a prominent figure in the multiverse saga where they pop up here and there in other projects.
S.H.I.E.L.D.
And I don't necessarily, yeah, exactly. Almost like S.H.I.E.L.D. made sense for that first kind of phase of Marvel leading up into the Infinity Saga and stuff like that, where I would love if the TVA is this version of S.H.I.E.L.D., right? And Mobius being kind of the Nick Fury, even though Nick Fury's still around sitting in a chair in the Marvels. Not really. So I hope that they continue to pop up in things. I don't think we'll get a TVA show or anything like that. I like that they're back and have a new purpose of finding these Kang variants and making sure the timeline can grow. So almost doing the opposite of what they were doing before, of probably popping into timelines to make sure that they can succeed and not have these apocalyptic events that get them kind of purged from the timeline. I think that's really, really cool. I love the last sequence of Loki kind of watching over Mobius and Sylvie, I think it's a perfect final shot. This whole sequence with the music and everything like didn't feel like an MCU like project.
It was
at a
art.
Point.
It was art
in a good way.
Yeah.
It was like, again, that goes back to just the vibe and the production design and that film grain and this music. And you're seeing Owen Wilson have this emotional moment and Sylvie come out and Loki kind of watching over them with tears in his eye and kind of like a smile. It was just such a perfect end point. So I like where they leave Mobius. I think he will eventually go back to the TVA because I don't know if he'll probably jet ski around for a little
He
while.
steals that
and then
jet ski?
probably
For
like go on a
sure.
little time vacation, and then he'll be back for Deadpool or something like that. Sylvie is the one character I think they did a little dirty this season. Like I think ultimately it ended up working out, but I do feel like she was just kind of in the background and more of a plot device than a real fully formed her own character this season. Like she was still great and I love her and I hope to see more of the character, but she's the one person, and Renslayer I guess too. I feel like they kind of thought they were going somewhere and then just kind of threw her into the void later. And then that's the thing I want to talk about you guys too, is like I think that's the most interesting thing of her being dropped there in front of Alioth in the void. They're showing us the TVA floor there, which means it could just be an old version of the TVA, and this has all happened before, right? Which I think is really interesting. Or is that a He Who Remains kind of him fail safe again, of sending her to a certain point to come talk to him again if he's still there or something like that?
I like that theory. I like that theory a lot. I think that feels more appropriate because there's something about this scene with Renslayer that feels very telling. It's almost like I said, I referenced John Locke because it reminded me immediately. It's the beginning of a new journey for Renslayer. You know, it's her origin story now, and very much like in Lost, when John Locke is confronted by the smoke monster, there's something in him that turns on, right? That changes John Locke's perspective. So I think that's very purposeful of why we're seeing that specific moment for sure. And maybe the hint of the fact that it is the TVA is that I don't know how pruning works, but did it drop her based on where she did get pruned? She got pruned in the TVA, therefore she's being dropped in a space in the void where they've pruned a TVA kind of thing. I don't know how it worked, because kind of like how they were hinting with time travel before, where Loki would time slip, but he would have to be in the same space. I'm wondering if the void's kind of functioning in that way, in some aspects, because she got pruned in, I think, the boardroom of the TVA. So I'm not sure, but again, just to see her story, there's more to tell here. And to your point, Sylvie definitely was done a little dirty this season. Like, she was kind of very background and not as important. I was hoping these last two episodes she'd be super, super important, but they just continued with that trajectory. But like, my question, I know we're kind of deviating here, but like, could they do a Loki season 3, but with Sylvie?
She is technically Loki.
It's possible. Yeah. I mean, I think there was something that I kind of wanted to raise in terms of suspicion with Sylvie in what I was talking about earlier with He Who Remains sort of nudging Loki along. There's an argument that could be made that she was in on He Who Remains' plan since the end of season 1. She kicks him through the time door. You know, we do get to see what happens, but maybe we didn't get to see everything that necessarily occurs. And she has his tempad, right? So she, it seems that at every major crossroads of this episode, she points Loki in the right direction by saying something to him. And I think she knew she'd end up with her own freedom to go anywhere and do anything she wanted, but I don't think she knew exactly what that meant for Loki. I think she played her part because she says in episode 5 exactly what she wants is to have a life of her own, and she gets it in this episode. So maybe her sort of hiding away from Loki was delaying the inevitable of what was to come. Like she knew something was, possibly she wouldn't be able to be with Loki. Maybe she knew that much, and she wanted to sort of delay that for as long as possible. And that drink in the bar seemed like, where Loki kind of goes to her in this episode and has his final goodbye, the drink in the bar felt like her final goodbye to him. And I just feel like the line where she says, he's giving us a chance was her realizing just how he's giving them a chance that she maybe already knew about. I don't know. What do you think? Do you think she's am I reaching here, or is it, does it sort of take away from...
I would like it if they could give us some sort of validation that could be a thing, but based on what you're reading, it does make sense. But like to the point of even like we were saying before, if the two brothers was Loki, I think you're more right. I think the idea now, I didn't think about it, but the fact that Mobius actually had two kids is probably what stopped him.
Is what they were trying.
That was what they were insinuating. But like to what Matt was saying, if they wanted it to be Loki, they probably validate that a little bit more along the way, because I think, again, her character, I do agree with you. I think that there are instances where she knew what was going on. Like when she says
they kept
in that final moment
looking...
where she's like, imagine if I didn't kill him, this would have never happened, sort of thing.
Right.
I don't know if that was
and then he goes right to that moment.
And she looked at him when she said it. She looked right at him and said, knowing, I think, like that she could. So I don't know if she was in on it, but I think she knew that
Loki's are selfish.
To try to fix something.
I'm just saying. No offense. I love Sylvie. Don't get me wrong. But Loki's are selfish at the end of the day. And
not all Lokis.
I feel like it was more just she wasn't thinking all the way through what she was doing. And that was her realizing what her decision has resulted in, which was the end of all time. And that's what she was dealing with, was trying to, rectify that. And like it boils down to her causing this chaos anyway. So maybe that's what I got from that moment. I don't know, it's an interesting theory, but I want to lean on the side that she didn't know and is still one of the good Lokis out there.
Totally. Yeah, I'd be happy. Honestly, I would be happy either way. But I also, just going back to Natalie Holt's music in this section specifically, the synthy theremin and then the horns. Literally, I mean, we Justin had a chance to talk to Laura Cartman, who did the music for the Marvels. Definitely go check out that interview. But she brought up a word that I hadn't really thought about in a long time, and that's sonification. And it really does feel like the theremin and the horns is like the sonification of the TVA and Loki of Asgard coming together. And it's so freaking lovely. And then you combine that with the focus in on that poster where it shows them preserving the great tree, says nurture our nature for a stable future, is just fantastic. But the way that the branches are made up of orange but also gold and green, orange being very much a TVA color and then gold and green being Loki, it's just the visual storytelling and the way that they sort of merge all this stuff together both visually and sonically is just unreal. But let's get to kind of our sort of final moment here, our predictions, if you will, where we talked about sort of a little bit of theorizing of where these characters end up. I want to know, do you have any theories or low-key perspectives, is what we call them, on where we might see these characters next? And Matt, I'll get you to go ahead.
I think my biggest question is He Who Remains in Kang, I guess, right? Because I think they put themselves in a spot where they could go either way. I know because of the state of the MCU right now, I think they're rethinking things and they're trying to kind of go, all right, do we want to stick to the plan? I think the multiverse is still going to be the plan. And everything going on, we don't need to get into it all, but all the Jonathan Majors stuff, right? That a trial's happening later this month and things like that, whether they might recast him or might not even use Kang in the future, and they might go the Doctor Doom route or go something else or something. Like, I'm curious. They left themselves in a spot where they could easily go, you know what, the TVA's, handling it. They're watching all the Kang variants and they're actually keeping it under control. And like, the 616 universe took care of the Quantum Mania Kang, and we could move on to something else. Or, the multiverse is now, open. It's in infinite, and the infinite amount of Kangs come out, and then that leads to Kang Dynasty and Secret Wars. I think that's what I'm thinking about a lot. Like, I still don't know, especially with how the Marvels did this weekend, and, I'm very glad we're taking a little bit of we're slowing down. We're pumping the brakes a little bit. Like, the only movie we have next year is Deadpool 3. We have What If coming up. We have Echo. We have I think maybe one other show next year. I forget what, but I'm kind of okay with pumping the brakes a little bit and having a little pumpkin the brakes.
Pumpkin the brakes.
Other than that, it's like what I mentioned earlier. Like, I hope we do not see. I'm fine to seeing other people in the TVA, Sylvie, Renslayer, like show up in different things or continue their stories. But like, I really hope that they let Loki just sit on this throne for a little while and that we don't see him. But the biggest thing is like what they're gonna do with Kang, and I feel like I remember in that Variety article, was it Variety? Yeah, where they talked about like, well, they're fucked. Like Kang is such a huge part of the finale, and there's no way they could possibly move forward. And I'm like, I didn't really see that here, and I don't know if they changed anything, but like I feel like they're in a spot where they could easily
switch
make
out
him or just go, you know what, the TVA's got it handled. We're doing something different.
Pivot.
So I don't know.
They could pivot. They could recast. There's so many different options. You know, like you said, like everything going on. Marvel's rethinking Jonathan Majors, what's going on with him. They could easily recast and still say that there's an importance, or they can very much park the character and keep him in this sort of tangent of, you know, he's across the multiverse and the TVA is under control. And then you can incorporate maybe a Doom that knows about Kang and knows about things and tries to utilize him in a way for himself so that he could be the important figure in Secret Wars. But I do think that there is an opportunity to do Secret Wars different with Loki being sort of the Beyonder or you know, the to Kang. And we've already had this sort of, again, this entry level conversation in this episode between Loki and He Who Remains. And, you know, he very much says, I'm going to break your loom and I'm going to figure out another way. And he did that. And I think that that's the first instance of challenge. I think we'll see more challenges potentially leading to a Secret Wars where that could be the way that Loki reunites with Thor in a way to send off his character inevitably is in a Secret Wars capacity because he chooses him to be on his as one of the, you know, heroes on his team.
Avengers.
Yeah, exactly. And on his team, so that there's that possibility. But, you know, how you get Doom incorporated into it, how you could get, you know, is it Kang? Something can happen there. I think that they're still figuring it out. I honestly, like, it's crazy that everyone's talking about like no season 3 for Loki. I agree. Like, I don't want to see Tom Hiddleston as Loki. I like how they've parked his character, but I still think that there's more stories to be told here. Like, again, especially the way things are left off.
Absolutely.
Renslayer, Sylvie, you know what I mean? The TVA is doing their thing. What happened to Hunter X5? Like, what happened to him? What happened to Brad?
Raphael.
Right?
Brad,
He's acting.
There's all sorts.
He just
he's probably. But again, like
Zaniac.
there's some things that they left on the table that feel so obvious that where else would they put them? Where else could you fit them if they weren't into some sort of like Loki season 3 and Sylvie's the Loki? And think about her relationship with Renslayer. Like, it would make so much sense if in a season 3 they were the opposing forces. They were the Loki and the She Who Remains sort of figure of time. And Ms. Minutes is intertwined, and even with Ms. Minutes, they left so much on the table about what
and the
she
reception
knows.
to this series in general. Like, people
Exactly.
like, I think in a dark time of the MCU, like, this is the one thing everyone I talk to is like, it's fucking awesome. So like, I can't fathom them going, nah, let's just, like, if they're making an Agatha series and like all this kind of stuff, like, there's no way that they just leave this and go, that's it.
It does require, though, the, you know, specific elements from the production team, from the writing, to really find themselves into wanting to tell more stories. But I think there's an opportunity here for potentially season 3, but I don't think we need to see Tom Hiddleston. I don't even think that they understand what happened. Like, do they know that he sacrificed himself, that he is at the center of this thing? I don't think so. I think they see him.
that Sylvie filled them in. Like, if Sylvie was with them at the end there, and after they see Loki go through there, they're obviously gonna have questions. And the only other person in that group who had been beyond that veil was Sylvie at some point. So
Sure.
I have a feeling she would have filled them in, and that's why they know about the whole tree thing and everything like that. But
Okay.
to me,
That's a good point,
I mentioned it earlier. The fact that Loki's magic is so ingrained throughout the multiverse now, there are so many potentials to tell a Loki story that it could just be each episode follows a new variant, or eventually leading to maybe the young Loki that joins the Young Avengers that also has a younger version of Kang on the team. Like, to me, there's some really cool stories that come from this idea that Loki is everywhere and everything now. And I again, we don't necessarily need to see Tom Hiddleston, but we could see a Richard E. Grant return to the role, or bring back the young Loki that we had in season 1, stuff like that.
Or alligator Loki.
Explore the
Anthology
Lokis and
series,
turn it
give
into
me-
that,
Yeah.
where it's more of a multiverse exploration, where there is a problem, but Loki's at the root of it all because of how involved he is in the multiverse.
The
And I think
root
that'd be a
of it
really
all,
neat idea.
Darcy? Jeez.
Yeah,
Calm down. But I do want to shout out Jackson21 Bart on our Discord. He mentioned the idea that maybe Loki would use his magic to project himself to various timelines, and kind of something like you were saying, Justin, assemble a multiversal Avengers team. I like that idea, but I also do really love the idea that, like, the next time we see Loki is him meeting with Thor. I think the next time that we see Sylvie, she might interact with Thor. I think that would be a really interesting dynamic, in the sense that he's also a Loki, and she gets to meet I guess maybe the brother that she never really had. And I think that would be really interesting. I also think Jane Foster might end up meeting Loki before Thor would. I think she's in Valhalla, and I don't know how.
Oh, I forgot about the whole
right. I don't know
Valhalla
how like
thing.
heaven works mixed in with the end of time or whatever, but I feel like they could probably connect in some way. I don't know.
I mean,
Interesting.
hey, Loki with his magic could have easily rewritten all those Asgardians lost to Ragnarok into the souls on Earth, and we could have had that whole Thor storyline where he's going around reawakening Asgardians. And
Yeah.
really fun stuff. There's a lot of cool potential storylines that could come
But
from the series.
I think we're all in agreement, though, parking Loki here for now. And then when you bring him back, it matters, right?
Yeah.
It's the same situation with some of these legacy characters, right? Everyone's like, oh, bring back Robert Downey, bring back Captain America. They'll save the MCU. No, they won't. They won't save the MCU. They'll give you like a one-time hit, and that's it.
They'll give a little jolt.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah, I think waiting, 4 or 5 years, I forget when Secret War, I think it's 2027,
Correct.
2028?
2027,
As of right now.
As of right
Yeah,
now.
yeah, it could be 28. That's like 4 years, right? I'd be fine if we let the characters sit for 4 years and not see them. So, yeah, but I do think that there's potential, and I don't want, like, part of me, it's hard letting things go because I do want this to continue, and it was so good that you're like, they got to have more great stories in them, and like, I can't fathom that they're just going to be like, oh yeah, that's it. But sometimes you need to let something sit for a while.
Well, hopefully we'll get to see them again in Deadpool, like it's rumored or potentially leaked. And I think no matter what happens with this show, I think how much they actually utilize it is going to be up to Kevin Feige and the writers and the directors of these future projects. But if they're smart, they'll use it to their advantage, because I think, you had mentioned, Matt, that this was up there with you for like Loki is now up there with Tony Stark. And I think this series, and especially this moment, is up there for me with the snap. Like it's on the same level. And so I can't fathom the idea that they won't continue to utilize the excellent writing from this show. But let's get to our overall impressions of the episode. We still got to do that part. And I want to know your score for episode 6. And then if you could follow up with your final thoughts on the season as a whole, and your score out of 5 on there. We're going to be using 2 rating scales. Our first rating scale is 1 to 5 paperweights / Infinity Stones, which I'm using as our own personal Ouroboros, because that was the rating scale we used in our first watch club for season 1, episode 1 of this show. And then if you could give your final score for the series out of 1 to 5 Thrones of Glorious Purpose. Matt, I will get you to kick us off.
This is the easiest 5 Infinity Stones. Just get the whole gauntlet. Just it's 5 out of 5 for this episode, and I think 5 out of 5 for this series as a whole. I think with as high of praise I said of being top 5 MCU for me, and I think, on any given day, like I even looked at my ranking today, which it's all nonsense anyway, but like I was like, going, wait, that was way too high. I moved things down, and every rewatch it changes. But right now I have the series, I think, like, I have Endgame, No Way Home, Infinity War. I really love Spider-Man Homecoming, and then I have this at 5, which is wild. So like I absolutely love it. So perfect scores all around. 5 Thrones and 5 Infinity Stones.
Nice. Thrones and Stones. Darcy, how about yourself?
I mean, yeah, this easy 5 out of 5 paperweights and Infinity Stones for the episode for me too. The acting, the music, everything about this was such a great way to close off this finale, potentially this series, because it was so good in terms of how they handled the character of Loki, which is what the show was all about. So that was incredible. And again, this season as a whole has been one of the best MCU shows start to finish. I mean, we all loved the beginning of Secret Invasion and were let down very quickly with that one. And this one seems to be the opposite, where I liked it even more as we got more from the series, especially the last 2 episodes were incredible. So this is easily a 5 out of 5 Thrones of Glorious Purpose for the season, because it is remarkable how much they managed to make me fall in love with the character all over again.
100%. Justin.
Well, I'm with you guys. I think that this finale surpasses expectations, and it gave such a great conclusion to this character's journey. The episode I love the way it uses the theme of time, utilizing fast and slow sequences to explore the more granular aspects of the narrative. And we got outstanding performances from the entire cast, but mostly Tom Hiddleston, obviously, as he goes through this emotional journey. Writing is sharp. It provided closure to character arcs while leaving room for some possibilities in the Marvel Cinematic Universe. And I think this is a finale that pushes emotion and philosophy with the narrative twists, and it creates a really satisfying and earned resolution. And honestly, at the end of the day, it just wrapped up this idea that this season is an exploration of redemption, identity, and the responsibility that this new character has. It's just adding new lore to the character of Loki. So I think this finale was a huge triumph. It gave me some thought-provoking moments, and it honestly, it feels like it's glorious purpose. I know it's really cheesy to say. It really does define that definition. So yeah, 5 out of 5 Infinity Stones for sure on the episode. And as for the season, yeah, like this is a testament of the quality of the MCU. When you choose quality over just quantity, like this is what you get. It's so refreshing, and it because it feels like it doesn't really owe anything to the larger narrative, like especially given like there's elements, but the way this series ends, or the way this season ends, it's contrary to expectations. I think everyone had huge thoughts of like overreaching storylines and what was it gonna influence and impact. But I was pleasantly surprised to see that these last 2 episodes particularly focused on Loki and sort of closing out his character and allowing us to dive more into his complexities without the burden of being tied to the broader MCU. So yeah, this season was fantastic. I think it's focused, concise storytelling that showcases the creative possibilities when you can give writers the freedom and just highlights focusing on characters as well, and just incredible. So it was a banger from season 1 with incredible production design, incredible cinematography, visual effects were top notch, writing was already there. So this is just a continuation of that. So yeah, 5 out of 5 Thrones and Stones, 5 out of 5. There you go.
We're throwing stones. This stupid. This episode,
and then Nate's 1 out of 5 and 2 out of 5 for Nate.
I honestly, this blew chunks like Matt's word vomit. No, this this episode was perfect. The callbacks not just this season, but or the series, but to Loki in his overall journey throughout the entire arc of his life is just fantastic. The writing is so deeply poetic, and it justifies sort of the end of this character and shows how we can get such personal, connected stories even when we're dealing with a god. And it kind of does some of the storytelling that like I was like I praised Eternals for, and this does it a million billion times better.
You praised what?
I praised Eternals. I like that movie. Yeah, I know you.
I'm kidding.
But the fact that we've got a god who was born alone, grew to crave glorious purpose for selfish reasons, and then to become the most selfless character in the MCU to serve a greater glorious purpose is fantastic. The music in both this episode, and the music in this episode, both the score and the soundtrack are next level. And the performances from Tom, Sophie, Jonathan, and Owen are flawless, and I love how each of them gets standout moments in this episode. I haven't felt this level of sort of melancholy, but also peace about an ending to a story arc in the MCU since Tony Stark. And I think that is a huge thing to be celebrated from from my own personal feelings. It's an easy 5 out of 5 Infinity Stones paperweights. And for the series overall, obviously everything you guys have said from top to bottom and everywhere in between, for all time always, this show has just been phenomenal and so incredibly consistent. The production design from season 1 to season 2, the music, as I already mentioned, the performances, and just it's such a huge win for Loki fans and for fans of the MCU in general. So I can't wait to see what it does for the MCU overall. I hope it does, as we were talking about, a lot more. And I hope that we can get more stories from these writers going forward, because I think they're incredibly talented. I'm giving Loki season 2 a flawless 5 out of 5 Thrones of Glorious.
Damn, I
Purpose.
was not expecting that.
No, you really didn't think that.
Not
eh?
expecting that. I didn't think that.
You
I
had
thought you were going to give me a 4.
4, yeah. I'm usually on the low end in Marvel chats. But before we wrap things up, Matt, could you let our lovely listeners know how they can keep up with you and all the wonderful conversations between yourself and a lovely man named Eric?
Yeah, Eric Martin, not to be confused with Eric Martin, the writer of Loki.
True, yeah.
I wish I did my show with Eric Martin instead of Eric Martin.
He's not going to listen this far into the podcast. We're okay.
He will. No, Eric knows I just like giving him shit. Eric's the best, way smarter than me. I do a little show called the Untitled Movie Podcast and another show called Untitled Movie Reviews, where myself and Eric Martin, not Eric Martin, talk about movies and the entertainment industry, as well as review new films and new TV shows and streaming. Even though it's called the Untitled Movie Podcast, we just kind of cover everything. So I'd love if you guys go subscribe on YouTube. You can just search for Untitled Movie Podcast, or on all podcast services, it's Untitled Movie Podcast and Untitled Movie Reviews. Easiest place to find us, one-stop shop. Go over to Letterboxd if you're on Letterboxd and just search Untitled_movies. We have an HQ over there where we post both our video and audio versions and our reviews and all that kind of stuff. So that's the best place to follow us. And then you can follow me on all those social medias at Matt Rorabeck.
And if you haven't had enough of hearing Matt talk about Loki specifically, he was also on the Kind of Funny screencast for 2 different episodes. So if you want to go back in time and hear his thoughts at 2 separate points in time, you can definitely go and do that. We'll have the links in our description for everything Matt just mentioned. I love the balance, Matt, that you and Eric bring to your podcast. I feel like as a collective here at Geekcentric, we always talk about how we kind of fall maybe a little more in line with your fandoms. That's why you're on this watch club,
sure.
And your likes and dislikes. But at the same time,
you guys just hate Eric. That's it.
No, I was going to say, you know what?
I love Eric.
I think
he's great, man.
The thing with Eric is, at least for myself, and I know Justin's a little more of like a cinephile, if you will, than maybe Darcy and I. But for myself, like Eric gives me something to strive for. In better understanding the art of cinema and like the history.
He's crazy.
And I'm just like, I'll be listening to him, and just to hear him talk about something like, well, it reminds me of the French film Three Girls Down the Door.
In an unpretentious way,
absolutely.
Right?
Absolutely.
Which is what I love about Eric and love about our show, because I'm very much on your guys' wavelength, where I like big popcorn movies, I like comic book movies, like I love artsy fucking long ass movies too, and but Eric has an encyclopedic knowledge of just cinema and movies in general, so and I think we balance each other really well, right? Like where I force him to watch fucking MCU movies every couple
and
months
talk about Last of Us for hours.
And introduce him to some. I'm sure he would have watched all this stuff anyway, but I think my enthusiasm for a lot of that stuff probably helps him through, it helps him enjoy some of this stuff a little bit more, I think, and then vice versa, like where he'll, I probably review a ton of stuff that I might not have gone to see, or he's introduced me to a bunch of stuff, and like I think me coming from a more populist angle, like I like to review movies kind of like if I'm just Joe Schmo going to the movies on a Saturday night at Cineplex, and I don't like some of the intellectual kind of bullshit that comes with reviewing movies, and I hate people who think that they're better than other people because they like movies that no one watches and shit like that, and I think Eric has a good spot where he really respects cinema. He gives a shit, but he tries to approach it from like anyone can love any of this stuff. And that's my big point is like, we're talked about the MCU for so long here. I hate people who hate the MCU and think like it's fine not to like something,
Right.
but to just write it off and be like everyone who likes that nonsense is
Because it's popular,
you know, because it's popular or it's, you know, silly and stuff like that. And you have to like this kind of shit. It's like, no, you just like what you want to like. But also be open too. That's my thing to a lot of people who try to listen to our show and stuff is like, I like to review, you know, MCU stuff one week and then, you know, award stuff and then small, you know, art films from TIFF and stuff like that. So we like to kind of cover everything, but yeah.
Yeah. Your dynamic, I've always enjoyed it because it does feel like two different minds of film coming together as friends and talking about it. It's like the celebration of movie watching, whether they be like all good movies or bad movies, you know, they're not always perfect, right? But you have fun doing it, and it's the act of talking that's really fun, which is like very much what I believe our culture wants to be as well. Is just fun talking about it. And sure, we can take the piss out of each other and say, that's stupid, but you know, whatever. We have fun with it the entire time, and we're just joking around. And I think that's the best part is you have fun with it, right? So
I needed to take a stance, and I haven't seen Killers of the Flower Moon yet because
nor have I.
Just I like to give Eric shit about that. I'm like, because he always wears his Martin Scorsese MCU shirt whenever he reviews a Marvel movie that he doesn't like. So I'm like, you motherfucker! I'm just not gonna go see that. And I love Scorsese too, and that's
I'll
why
watch it at home when I can go pee and pause.
Yeah, that whole conversation I think is very funny, and for me, it's just like I do want to see it. I just now I'm at a point where I'm like, it'd be funnier to just stand my ground and not see it. So, anyways, that's our whole thing. But thank you guys for having me. I love talking to you guys. It's a blast because I get to geek out with you guys, and it's really awesome. So we should do this more often.
100%.
Yeah, definitely.
Whether you're an MCU fan or a Scorsese fan, we are Geekcentric, and you can be too. So go check out all the stuff that Matt just talked about. Listen to their podcast, check out their YouTube. But that is it for this Watch Club for Loki Season 2. We hope you enjoyed it, and if you did, make sure to subscribe to us wherever you like to listen to podcasts, if you haven't already. And if you want to write into the show with your thoughts or your predictions on the shows we cover in Watch Club, well, let me just send Justin out onto the gangway millions of times over and over and over again over the course of a few centuries so that he can let you know how you can reach us across time.
Okay, I got it this time. They can reach us at wearegeekcentric@gmail.com. That's wearegeekcentric@gmail.com. They can reach out to us on the app formerly known as Twitter, X, whatever it's called, at Geekcentric YT, and they can reach out to us on Instagram at We Are Geekcentric.
Now, Justin, mention the Discord. Make sure to mention the Discord.
Okay, right, the Discord. We will have that in the links below. We talk spoilers. We love to get engaged with our community. We've been having some great conversations about the Marvels and Loki Season 2, so come join along.
Wow, he did it, and we've finally ended the loop that is this podcast. Keep in mind, we do have a ton of other episodes covering the recent releases with our spoiler-free reviews from Marvel Studios' The Marvels, The Hunger Games, A Ballad of Songbirds and Snakes, the Netflix series Blue Eye Samurai, Pumpkins, Invincible Season 2, Part 1, and David Fincher's The Killer. We got a ton of interviews out now, like our interviews with the creative team behind Loki, where Justin had the chance to speak with Dan DeLeo, who directed episode 2, Kazar Farahani, who directed episode 3, and lead production design on the show as well. Kazar Farahani, who directed episode 3. He's also lead production design on the show as well. And Christine Wada, who was the mastermind behind the excellent costumes on the show. He chats with them all about the way that they collaborated into sort of crafting season 2 of Loki. And if that's not enough Marvel goodness, as I mentioned earlier, Justin also had the chance to speak with Laura Karpman, the composer for Marvel Studios' The Marvels, as well as the executive producer Mary Livanos, as they and both of them also shared sort of what sets the Marvels apart from other projects, but they also talk about the power of collaboration and what makes that movie so special. So go check out all those interviews either here on your podcast service of choice or over on YouTube at youtube.com/geekcentric. And lastly, we'd love it if you give us a 5-star review. Let us know what you think of us. You can leave a review. We'd love to become some Rotten Tomatoes, just like Eric Marchin. I think you call that out, Matt, every single time. He's what is it? He's allergic to tomatoes.
He is actually allergic to tomatoes.
Wow.
But he is tomato meter
There we
approved.
go.
So they won't let me in for some reason, but he's in it.
Well, we'll try to get you in if we ever get in. Matt, Justin, Darcy, thank you so much for joining me for this Watch Club. And as we say, possibly for the last time,
For all time,
always.